Good evening, friend. I see you've wandered into another tavern, and I can't help but wonder, what do you hope to hear from the bards this evening?
Moriden Athluan.
Tonight, dear listeners, I tell you the tale of Moriden Stormcrown, the Dragonborn of the 4th Era.
Using his mastery of magic, Moriden faced down the Mad Mage Ancano and prevented him from tapping power that would have ended the world.
Bah, master of magic indeed.
Through his cleverness, his strength of arms, and the power of his voice, he had captured the mighty Odahviing and forced it to reveal the location of dreaded Alduin.
Stepping through the veil, he entered the hallowed halls of Sovngarde itself and battled the World Eater, destroying the beast and saving all of Nirn for a second time.
Not that anyone noticed at the time. I sometimes wonder why I bothered.
Now, top off your ales and listen as I tell of his time among the mighty companions of Skyrim and his rise to power as their harbinger.
You have got to be kidding me. There is almost no chance that they know what happened among the companions, let alone all the time I spent gathering political power to myself. No, they have it all wrong. You, though, you seem almost desperate to hear the story. What is it you are looking for, I wonder? Well, since you want the story so bad and we seem to have time, why not order us a couple of drinks and I'll tell you the truth of that time. The truth, mind you. Not that drivel that bard up there is embarrassing themselves with. Because the truth... the truth is not what the bards would have you believe. Five Morning Star, 4th Era, 202. I hadn't expected when I awoke this morning that I would find a Thalmor airship at my doorstep. The Pamar had granted me a place to stay, a rockside home called Pride Rock. Being in the heart of the rebels' territory, waking to find that ship was, as you might expect, quite alarming when you had not expected it. Took me several seconds to convince myself we weren't under attack and that my bow wasn't needed. Still, it was here, likely brought back by the scouts after I had cleared it yesterday evening. From the activity on her, the khajiit are already swarming all over her, which meant that the scout whose word I was waiting on was likely up there as well. Arriving on board, I was greeted enthusiastically and with a great deal of pomp, which I thought completely out of place. I was escorted below into the ship itself, where I met with the scout Kulin, who informed me that, by the right of the hunt, this ship was mine. The waning moon was mine to command and could get us on the trail of the Thalmor Justiciar, who had been causing havoc for the rebels without much effort. I ordered the ship to make for our target, and stayed firmly below. I had no wish to see the world from the air again, and the thought of it was enough to make my stomach queasy. The trip was smooth enough, but there were some moments when I could have sworn that we were in freefall. We made landfall at long last, some hours later, only to have a word with the scout. Landing right on top of the Thalmor is not the easiest way to sneak up on them. On the other hand, the Thalmor clearly didn't know that we had stolen one of their ships, so the surprise when 3 khajiit warriors and I dropped to the ground was total. They did not survive the surprise. After the fight, however, it all made more sense. There was a small outpost here run by a blacksmith, of all things, that had been under attack. Seeing the need, the crew had dropped in to deal with it. As luck would have it, these Thalmor are, according to that blacksmith, part of the expedition that the Justiciar I'm looking for is part of. And, again, according to this blacksmith, he isn't far away. Following the directions given me, I climbed up a rock pathway and onto a ledge that wasn't far from the outpost we had just saved. There were a few Thalmor left, though not many. 2 of the nastier bits of local wildlife, a creature called a Siligonda, had just finished being killed when I arrived, and they had taken a number of the Thalmor out before being defeated themselves. As best I can tell, though, none of them are the Justiciar, though it became clear we had only just missed him. His journal, found in a chest, told us that much, and that he had given up trying to get to the rebel camp in the main forest and had turned to attacking the smuggling network instead. A sound strategy, really. Except he hadn't counted on losing one of his airships. Now we can strike at will, and the Thalmor won't know it's us until we jump over the railings of the ship to rain death upon them. But where we go from here, I am not yet certain. I returned to the waning moon to see what Kular could make of the situation. With no further leads, Kular directed the ship back towards home, which meant I stayed, once again, below decks. An hour later, however, I could hear a cry above that seemed to indicate all was not well. A moment later, and the ship rocked hard to starboard, as if it had hit something, and then a great shout went up. I didn't want to. Oh, how I did not want to. But I went above, and found the ship crawling with Thalmor. We had been intercepted and were being boarded. Now I may not care for heights, and I might not use this ship much when this is all over, but the ship was still mine, and no Thalmor, especially, was going to take it from me. Ignoring that huge, vast, blue emptiness beneath the ship, I danced about the edge of the fray, putting arrows into the Thalmor when I could make them out through the smoke and fire. I didn't even have to shoot to kill. A wound was just as good, causing several to stagger and fall over the edge. I really didn't want to think about that part. When the top deck had been cleared, I waved at the crew to remain behind and douse the fires. The ship wasn't safe from a long, long fall just yet. While they started on that, I went below on the other ship. Really, there was no way to sneak in and work quietly, so I didn't bother to try. I smashed in the hatch, dropped down, and put a blade through the first thing I saw moving, which was fortunate. The Justiciar had summoned a Draymora as well, and had I not stabbed the summoner through the throat the instant I dropped, that could have gotten quite dicey. So the Thalmor hunting the rebels is now dead. A solid victory for the new Elsewyr movement. We put the still-burning Thalmor ship adrift, and as we sailed back to the forest, we watched, even I, though I kept a firm grip on the railings, with pride, as that ship slowly started to dive towards the ground and vanished from sight. We were still some hours or so from the forest when Kulan got my attention and humbly suggested an alternate destination. He had a mage friend who had been captured by pirates, but their stronghold had been unassailable, making a rescue attempt impossible. Until, he realized, this airship had come along. With it, we could swoop down on the seaside fortress and kill the pirates, making it possible to save his friend. If, he emphasized, I was willing to allow him to try. I almost said no. I'm still not sure why I didn't. But after a moment of thought, I gave a nod, and we changed course. The pirates had no idea what was happening. Though they saw us coming and tried to take precautions, seeing a flying ship was not something they were prepared for. When we poured off of the waning moon and started to stab, shoot, and otherwise put holes in them, though, that they understood, and the fighting was fierce. Pointless, but fierce. Especially when, as it turned out, Kulan's friend had decided to act on the distraction and take care of his captives as well. Also, something about seeing how well toads fly. I don't try to pretend to understand some of the oddities of khajiit humor, but I think I was being joked with. Possibly. The mage, however, was in no mind to leave the island. Instead, he requested that his apprentices be sent to this island so he could get it cleaned up. He seems to have plans to turn this into some kind of stronghold for the new Elsewyr movement. Not the worst plan I've heard. Certainly better than the one that I left Windhelm with months ago. I returned to the moon and we sailed her back to the forest, where we passed on word for the mage's apprentices. Though I slept through it all, I gave Kulan permission to move the ship as needed to transport goods and people from the forest hideout to the new base at the Topal Sea. I think I woke once or twice, but eventually I fell into a deep sleep. 6 Morning Star, 4th Era, 202. When I awoke, the ship was at rest at the new Topal Sea base of the new Elsewyr movement. Progress on its cleaning and manning had been swift, with the ship making 4 or 5 trips overnight, and the eager new members of this base's personnel making quick work of clearing out the old pirates' belongings in favor of their own. It still has a long way to go, but it is a far sight from what I had expected out of, say, the Nords. I left the ship for a look around, content with the work I had finished, but also realizing I still had yet to find Aryen's contact here, and collect the staff I'd been sent to find. Somehow, things seemed to just work out at times. As I strolled about the island, I was called to and stopped by a khajiit I had never before seen. He apologized for his rudeness and then introduced himself as Rakis, the one I'd been here to meet in the first place. Hearing that I had been assisting the rebels, he'd assumed I would still be on the island, and had almost left when he'd gone over the place several times and not seen me. Fortunately, I'd caught his attention before he left, so now I have the Staff of Indarys, the item that Aryen and the khajiit here want kept out of Thalmor hands. The way Rakis describes them, the Thalmor are essentially doing the same thing that the Synod out of Cyrodiil is doing, getting their hands on anything with even a scrap of power, hoping it will make their later actions easier somehow. Given how well that worked for the Synod in Skyrim, I'm going to take pleasure in the Thalmor's absolute failure in that regard. We sailed the ship back to the forest once again, where I formally turned the ship over to Kulan. I have no need of it in Skyrim. Indeed, it would call far more attention to me than I have any wish to have. The Thalmor in particular will not help but notice the ship and put a few things together. While they may be being pushed back here in the jungles of Elsewyr, the tundra of Skyrim still crawls with them. That done, I made arrangements and traveled the moon paths once again, arriving back in Skyrim near Falkreath as the sun was rising. I'd heard tell that the sun could be at different places at different parts of the world before, but I had never seen any evidence of it until now. Now back in familiar territory, I first went to the Dead Man's Drink, where I placed a number of objects, including the staff I'd been sent for, in the shipping crates to be sent to the museum. That done, though, I realized that I had a problem. I had no real direction to go, once again. Well, not entirely true. There was still a field station to oversee the construction of for the guild, but once that was done, I wasn't sure what I was going to do with myself. Alduin was dead. The college was not ever going to be a home for me. I was running out of options, of places that I might call home in Skyrim. I couldn't return to begging on the streets. But neither did I have any idea what I could do other than the museum. Which, to be fair, would keep me in wealth, but it had not to this point done anything to fill that hole in my soul where the power of the vampire had once nestled. Magic had not been the answer, so maybe another kind of power would. I recalled suddenly an offer from the Jarl of Falkreath, one that I'd laughed about at the time. The possibility of becoming Thane here. I'd already attained the title in Whiterun. Why not another? And perhaps the other holds as well. Political power was something I'd largely ignored, but the right words, in the right place, at the right time, could do what swords and armies could not. Recalling that the Jarl's directions indicated that I needed to be well known throughout his hold before he could give me the title, I sat for a bit at the drink and thought. Simple favors, I finally decided, were likely the first and best way to work towards this kind of local renown without having to actually live here the rest of my life. I had a few leads to work with. For example, I recalled that one of the gate guards had asked about finding a dog for the town blacksmith, Lod. Assuming he was still looking for that dog, that would be one place to start. And then there was the old Jarl. Given that he'd been ousted by his son, I figured there might be a thing or two that I could do for him on the side. Things that the current Jarl wouldn't want happening. Opportunities surely abounded in this near-forgotten little hold. I started with Lod, and found that he was still looking for that dog. I agreed to take on that situation, and I would get on it as soon as I was finished looking around town for other opportunities. From the blacksmith's, I went and paid a visit to the old Jarl, Dengir. He is an interesting family. Once the Jarl, he thinks he was outed by imperial gold and a conspiracy. He says that his own old age was just some kind of cover, but after listening for a few minutes, I don't know that it was. For example, months after the Civil War ended, he still thinks of himself as a Stormcloak sympathizer. Fool. But a useful fool. His paranoia had me steal a letter he saw Lod writing a day or so ago, one that he was certain would be to Tullius, or the Legion. No. It was an order for all of the iron ore that he could get. When I turned that over, though, Dengir convinced himself it must be some sort of code. Strange old man. Even so, with his trust earned, he led me out to the graveyard and pointed out a grave. Though the earth was freshly turned, the stone above it, the name Vigar still barely legible, made it clear this was no new grave. Dengir explained. Vigar was an ancestor of his family's, and though the people of Falkreath think this incident a result of some kind of corpse theft, it is, in fact, that his ancestor has risen again. Because he's a vampire, and has been for quite some time. Only a wardstone, constantly renewed by the family, had been keeping him locked up. That wardstone has been stolen, and Vigar has now escaped confinement. I smiled slightly. A vampire to hunt? That I could do. If nothing else, it would reduce competition for Lady Serana. I agreed to deal with the situation, and Dengir wandered off back to his home and his delusions. I left the city, heading north into the mountains. The most likely place for Vigar to go, if other vampires I have hunted and worked with are any indication, is a previous haunt or lair. And Vigar was originally hunted down in a place called Bloodlit Throne, high on the mountainside to the south of here. Summoning up Arvak, I followed the same path that, once upon a time, had taken me to the Ancestor Glade. I passed that cave entrance and continued to press south, higher and higher into the peaks. The high peaks of Skyrim in the middle of winter. What was I thinking? That I had suddenly missed the cold after a few days baking in Elsewyr? Inconsistency aside, it was just after midday when I found the ruin. Though there was nothing on the exterior to suggest that anyone was home at first glance, I nodded to myself when I saw the signs of fresh blood near the doorway. He will think when I enter that easy prey has come to him. He'll soon learn otherwise, though he won't have much of a lifespan left in which to learn from it. I slipped through the front door and into my comfort zone, the dark shadows of an unlit area where only the sharp of hearing and sight can survive. After days plowing through bright sunshine and oppressive heat, these shadows were a balm to my soul. For that, if nothing else, Vigar would have my thanks. Well, I suppose he'll get credit for the coins I'm getting as well. Without his death, what would I gain, after all? The tower was nothing special, really. Vampires, I have it on reliable authority, tend towards arrogance. They put on the airs of civilization, but just below that veneer they are beasts waiting to escape. Those here were no different. They were no smarter, no more powerful than any of the creatures I have slain over the last months. Oblivion, they even all but lined up to let me shoot them. The arrogance extended even to what they clearly thought of as their private arena. I saw Vigar along with some of his trusted lieutenants sitting high above it, waiting for me to arrive. They were in plain sight, where it would be hard for me to do anything to them. Or so they thought. Why do they forget that archers are a thing in Skyrim? Seriously, if I hadn't killed them already, I could just throttle them all. I left the long cold corpses of Vigar and his new followers behind in the ice-clad tower. Given how far it is off of the main paths of Skyrim, I find it unlikely that anyone will find them any time soon. Even if they did, none will care, except to be grateful that there was a number less vampires to be concerned about during the night hours. It took me until those same night hours began to descend the mountainsides and enter Falkreath. Dengir was appropriately grateful, of course, though I am somewhat surprised he was willing to talk about it in front of others. Then again, I suppose the others in the room were either family or sworn to the family, so there wasn't anything to hide. The news was likely welcome to them all. I left their home and took a room at the Dead Man's Drink for the evening. As I was drifting off to sleep, however, I noticed the faintest hints of another Daedric Lord's attention. Seven Morning Star, 4th Era, 202. Though I remained at the drink until well after dawn, it was not a restful night. That presence I felt grew stronger and stronger. At last I could not ignore it further and went out into the town to try to trace it down. Oddly, it was the barracks where I felt it strongest. Though I was given several sideways glances as I wandered around, the guards left me be. And in time, I found myself in the jails. There was a larger cell here, one that was open to the sky, a giant pit, in a way, an odd cell. And in it was an odd man. His greeting about gawking at monsters was enough to get my full attention. The story is a typical one for those who deal with Daedra, myself, so far, excluded. He is a werewolf, a beast caught up in the shape of a man, or perhaps the other way around. Sindig wanted nothing to do with it and had hoped that by using the Ring of Hircine, he could control his transformations. Hircine, it seems, had other ideas. A badly timed transformation, and he had killed a young girl in the city. The burial that I had seen a few days ago, I'm guessing. He passed the ring on to me, telling me to seek a giant white elk and slay it. Get Hircine's attention. Try to get him uncursed by the Lord of the Hunt. He then transformed and in a few moments had climbed free of the cell and... well, who knows where he'll end up now. I'm not sure that's how it will work out, but given that I know that Hircine's attention is already on me, I am going to seek him out, rather than wait on his pleasure. I don't think that would turn out well. I haven't hunted for the thrill of it before. Always there was a need for food, or materials. Never could I simply hunt for the simple joy of it. Today I was able to do that, and I was reminded of my time as a vampire, of the stalking of prey. A bittersweet memory of something I can never have again. The hunt led me up the same pathways I had traveled yesterday, and on the side of the mountains, I was finally able to deliver a clear shot to a white stag, taking it through the heart. The beast fell, and moments after it bled its life away, a ghostly image of the stag appeared, the avatar of Lord Hircine. As I had been requested to do, I bade him remove the curse from the ring. He is apparently far angrier than Sindig had believed, for I have now been set to hunt him, tear the skin from his body, and make it an offering to Hircine. And, lest I think that refusing him would save the man's life, he also let it be known that others were hunting him as well, all seeking Hircine's favor. At least I know I can make it quick for him. Sindig, I am told, has made for his hideaway a place called Bloated Man's Grotto on the north side of the mountains bordering Lake Ilinalta. A fast enough ride, I think. I would not want the condemned to suffer when I can still deliver the blow quickly and end his misery. It was the strangest thing. I arrived at the entrance to the grotto just after noon, but as I entered the cave itself, it were as though I could feel time passing. When I emerged from the entrance into the inner portions of the grotto, I looked up to find a twilight sky. Lord Hircine wants this to be a night hunt, it seems, and, given the quarry, that makes sense. A man is dangerous prey, no doubt, but a werewolf in full fury would be levels of dangerous beyond that. The evidence for that was laid out before me already. 4 of the other hunters that Lord Hircine had told me would be present were already killed, their throats ripped out. I pulled my bow and began to stalk Sinding. I doubt the Aedra will have any mercy on his soul. And Hircine certainly won't.